The National Democratic Party of Germany. The National Democratic Party of Germany is a far-right political party that was founded in 1964 as a successor to earlier nationalist movements after World War II. Back in the 1960s, the NPD saw some success in regional politics, winning seats in a few state parliaments. But it never made it into Germany's federal parliament. Over time, its influence faded as mainstream conservative parties attracted nationalist voters, and authorities cracked down on the party's radical rhetoric and alleged links to extremists. The German government tried to ban the NPD twice, once in 2003 and again in 2016, arguing that it was anti-democratic and unconstitutional. Both attempts failed because the courts ruled that the party was too small and irrelevant to be a real threat. In 2023, the NPD rebranded itself as Die Heimat, hoping to update its image and attract more nationalist voters. Despite this, it remains a fringe party, especially since the far-right alternative for Germany has become much more popular. CasaPound. CasaPound is an Italian far-right movement that popped up in 2003. It's named after Ezra Pound, the American poet who backed fascism, and it calls itself a third-position movement, rejecting both capitalism and communism while pushing nationalism, social welfare, and direct action. It started out as a squatting movement, taking over empty buildings to house struggling Italians, arguing that locals should be prioritized over migrants. CasaPound blends neo-fascist ideas with activism, promoting national identity, anti-globalism, and traditional values. It's not just about politics. It runs bookshops, gyms, and cultural centers to spread its message and connect with young people. Unlike some old-school far-right groups, it's tried to look more modern and has even run in local elections. Still, the movement has a history of violence and extremism, with members getting into street fights and hate crimes. In recent years, the Italian government and social media platforms have cracked down on CasaPound, banning accounts and limiting its activities. Ordina Nuovo. Ordina Nuovo was a far-right extremist group in Italy, founded in 1956 by Pino Rauti, a former member of the Movimento Sociale Italiano. The group pushed fascist and ultranationalist ideas, rejecting democracy and calling for a strong authoritarian government. Its members were heavily influenced by Julius Evola, a far-right philosopher who wanted a return to strict, old-school social hierarchies. By the late 1960s and 1970s, Ordina Nuovo became involved in right-wing terrorism, using bombings and attacks to stir up chaos and push the government to crack down on left-wing groups. One of their most dangerous attacks was the Piazza Fontana bombing in 1969, which killed 17 people and injured over 80 in Milan. While some members were investigated, convictions were inconsistent due to a lack of direct evidence. The Italian government banned Ordina Nuovo in 1973 for its violent activities, but its ideas didn't disappear. The Movimento Sociale Italiano. The Movimento Sociale Italiano was a far-right political party in Italy, founded in 1946 by Mussolini supporters and former fascists. At first, the M.S.I struggled to be taken seriously in post-war Italy, where fascism was officially outlawed. It attracted former fascist officials, soldiers, and sympathizers who weren't happy with the new democratic system. While the party praised Mussolini's policies, it stopped short of openly calling for a return to dictatorship. By the 1950s and 1960s, the M.S.I built a small but loyal following, mostly among Italians who were frustrated with democracy or scared of communism. It often clashed with left-wing groups and stayed a controversial presence in Italian politics. In the 1970s and 1980s, the M.S.I tried to soften its image to attract more mainstream voters, but it was still seen as an outsider party. By the 1990s, as Italy's political landscape changed, the M.S.I officially dissolved in 1995 and rebranded as Alleanza Nazionale, a more mainstream conservative party that tried to distance itself from its fascist past. Russian National Unity. The Russian National Unity was a far-right ultranationalist group that popped up in Russia in 1990, started by Alexander Barkashov. They pushed hardcore Russian nationalism, Orthodox Christianity, and a militaristic mindset, mixing in neo-Nazi and fascist vibes with Russian imperialism. They were anti-West, anti-liberal democracy, anti-communist, and super against non-Slavic minorities in Russia. RNU ran like a paramilitary gang, rocking Nazi-style uniforms, red armbands, and a swastika-like emblem. They trained members in combat, self-defense, and weapons handling, wanting to build a force to defend Russia's national identity. At its peak, RNU had thousands of members, but by the early 2000s, things started falling apart. The Russian government cracked down, banning their activities and arresting members. While the group isn't around as a single movement anymore, ex-RNU members still show up in nationalist militias and paramilitary groups, especially in Russia's conflicts in Ukraine and other nationalist causes. National Action. National Action was a far-right extremist group that popped up in the UK in 2013. It was a white nationalist movement, pushing for a racially pure Britain and hating on multiculturalism, immigration, and democracy. The group spread its message through propaganda, protests, and online campaigns, often glorifying fascists and using extreme rhetoric. Unlike regular far-right parties, National Action was openly militant, relying on street activism and direct action. They made headlines by waving Nazi-style banners at protests, posting violent threats online, and harassing politicians and minority groups. They also tried to recruit young people, especially students, using social media and campus outreach. In 2016, after far-right extremist Thomas Mayer murdered MP Joe Cox, National Action was banned under the UK Terrorism Act, making it the first far-right group outlawed in Britain since World War II. Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn was a far-right party in Greece, founded in 1980 by Nikolaos Mikaloliakos. It started as a small nationalist movement, but gained a lot of attention during Greece's economic crisis in the late 2000s. The party pushed Greek nationalism, was strongly anti-immigration, and opposed the European Union and globalization. By 2012, Golden Dawn had entered parliament, riding on public anger over economic hardships and political corruption. At its peak, it was Greece's third-largest party. However, it quickly became infamous for its violent attacks on migrants and political opponents. Its members were known for paramilitary-style tactics, wearing black shirts, patrolling the streets, and holding rallies that reminded many of past nationalist movements. In 2020, after years of legal battles, Greek courts ruled that Golden Dawn was actually a criminal organization, linking its leadership to organized crime and violent attacks. Mikaloliakos and other top members were convicted and sent to prison. After that, the party collapsed. Nova Resistencia. Nova Resistencia is a far-right political group in Brazil that started in 2015. It pushes nationalism, anti-globalism, and traditional values, arguing that liberalism and globalization are harming Brazilian society. The group takes a lot of inspiration from Eurasianism, a geopolitical theory linked to Russian political thinker Alexander Dugin, which emphasizes a Eurasian cultural and political identity. They're big on the idea of a multipolar world, meaning they oppose Western dominance, especially from the United States, and favor closer ties with Russia and China as a counterbalance. They also strongly believe in preserving traditional culture and criticize modern social movements that they think are eroding these values. Critics accuse Nova Resistencia of pushing authoritarian and extremist ideas, pointing to its admiration for controversial leaders and regimes. Despite the backlash, the group stays active through social media, publications, and events, trying to shape public opinion and policy in line with its beliefs.